Hi there, Jeffrey. You are locked on Reds because once again, Jeff Carr has hit a key in the middle of the open. Welcome to a live edition of Locked on Reds. Listen up. The trade deadline is upon us. What are the Cincinnati Reds going to do between now and next Tuesday? Well, we're going to talk about it on today's live Locked on Reds.
You are Locked on Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked on Reds, and welcome into our live show here on this Friday afternoon. My name is Jeff Carr, his name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have been podcasting for a combined 12 years now about these Red Legs, and quite frankly, we're glad that you're alongside us. We only have a few more days left until the MLB Trade Deadline, so we're going to go over our predictions for what we think the Reds will do, since they've waited to the last minute, but quite frankly, the entire league has procrastinated to this point, so that's where we are. We're going to look at, could there be some big names traded? Could there be some players that we don't expect to get dealt? So how do you expect what you don't expect? Well, that's why you're here for us, talking Reds baseball. Make sure you jump down into the comments section. Give us your questions. Give us your thoughts. Give us your mock trades. We love to go through some mock trades, some trade ideas. We're going to give you some. You give us some. We'll talk about those later on in the podcast. And quite frankly, Steve, I mean, there's been so many rumors about what the Reds could do, about what the Reds are thinking they're going to do, about what the position that they find themselves in. We're going to look at exactly what we expect to happen based on all of those rumors, and quite frankly, based on the way that the season has gone along. That's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Check out the site for the skilled trades today. Go to SupplyHouse.com and order your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical parts for your next project at SupplyHouse.com. All right, Steve, so the rumors are this: they're sellers, they don't know if they're sellers; they're buyers, they don't know if they're buyers. They want to trade relief pitching, they want to trade Jonathan India, they don't want to trade anybody. So all of that is to say, everyone has no clue what the Reds are going to do, but you and I have a really good feeling as to how it's going to be.
Yeah, I think so. And Jeff, if you could do me a favor and throw your headphones on, I'm getting feedback for me. You know, the thing with the Reds is I think that describing them as not knowing what they're going to do sounds a little accurate. I think that they would like to be a buyer. They would like to continue to paint the picture that they believe they have it within them to make a playoff push towards the end of this season, as long as they can just kind of hang around on that final wild card spot. So that being said, I think that Nick Kral's actively looking to go make an upgrade. I don't think that this is one. I think rather this is one of those rare times where they don't fit in a box of they're sellers, they're buyers. I think they're more in a lane of looking for an opportunity. And if there's an opportunity to package a couple prospects from down low and not affect the major league roster and bring in, say, a right-handed power bat, great. They'll look to do that. If some kind of deal materializes for somebody in the active roster, say a couple pieces out of the bullpen, maybe someone's desperate for a starting pitcher and you can flip Frankie Montas for a little something in return, that might be a deal you entertained. While you were gone, Jeff, I went through this roster, this active roster, player by player, and talked about what could they get in return. And there's not very many guys as standalones that you can even look at and say, oh yeah, that would be a guy that you could flip or package with a prospect and get that right-handed outfield bat. You might, start talking to the Athletics about bringing in a certain outfielder that you love. But independently, there's not a lot of big pieces on the active roster to do something like that with. So I think the Reds find themselves in a very weird lane. It's they can do something, they should do something, but they shouldn't be calling themselves sellers, and they really shouldn't be labeled a seller.
No, and they're not really even buyers in the traditional sense either, where, a buyer is looking for a rental guy, that player to get them over the hump or something like that. The Reds are buyers in the sense that they're still trying to build as much for next year as for this year. And I think a lot of people love to say, well, they're punting for next year, but what they need is guys with multiple years of control. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the reason that, whenever the Rays and the Mariners made their trade for Randy Arozarena to go to Seattle, I was kind of bummed to see that was the case, because quite frankly, Randy Arozarena, I think, is probably the best available outfielder that I could think would be on the trade market. Like, you could make an argument between him and Luis Robert, but I think Arozarena is a little bit more durable than Luis Robert is and has had a better year. So when I think about that trade, I'm like, man, really feels like the Reds should have been on that. Now, I'm not saying that I know that they weren't, because the Rays may just be in love with the Mariners farm system, and maybe the guys they got were their guys. Like, their scouts had labeled them the cream of the crop, the guys that they wanted for this deadline, and that's just how things go. But the way that I look at this, I feel like the Reds could have outbid them on this. I feel like the Reds could have made this trade theirs and added the guy that they needed. And with Randy Arozarena on this team, you feel so much better. That is the kind of guy that we're looking for. Multiple years of control and a guy that helps you stabilize this outfield. Randy Arozarena would have even done a little bit better than that. So that's what we're talking about when we say, all right, the Reds are going to go make an upgrade, whether it's Brent Rooker or whether it's somebody else, however it is they attack that. I think that's the biggest thing for me is, all these rumors that are going around of, well, they might trade relief pitchers. They don't know if they're sellers. They don't know what they are. I think Nick Krall is literally just leaving it open to seeing what materializes. And as annoying as that is for us fans, I think that is his current standing when it comes to this trade deadline.
Well, here's something interesting. Breaking news. I see a couple people in the comments talking about it really quick. The Reds activate TJ Friedl, who had all of 35 seconds of rehab down.
Got their trade deadline acquisition.
He is activated, and out goes Rhys Hines. And we've talked about that, and I'm sure that'll come up a little bit later. But here's what's interesting, Jeff. We have a lineup. Leading off, Jonathan India at second base, batting second, Ellie De La Cruz at shortstop, batting third, Spencer Steer at first base, and batting cleanup in center field, TJ Friedl.
Huh?
Yeah.
But cleanup?
Cleanup.
That's weird.
I'm sure we're going to spend some time talking about that, but not to hijack the whole segment. We'll circle back around, folks. But yeah, TJ Friedl batting fourth. That just like we talked about all offseason last year. Cleanup hitter, TJ Friedl. Oh boy. So here's the deal, Jeff. We look at this roster, and I've seen the rumors. You're seeing the rumors. Jonathan India right now is on a heater at just the right time. His trade value is returned. There was a time where he had a lot of trade value. It went away. It's back. So everybody's talking about Jonathan India. And while you were away, I had a fiery episode following that 3-game sweep in Washington. And I said a lot of things, but one of the things I said in that show, Jeff, is that I don't want to trade Jonathan India. I feel like there's too many questions that have remained unanswered with the youth on this team because people have been hurt and we don't exactly know what they have. So I don't know that Jonathan India is that luxury that we thought he was last offseason. I think that he's a piece that they should be looking for including in this 2024, either late season run or the 2025. Hopefully they finally got it together and everybody's healthy run. But either way, I think that Jonathan India has established that he's a part of that. The Reds signed him to a 2-year, very affordable deal. All of the boxes are checked with Jonathan India to remain a Cincinnati Red.
What about this though? Because I don't think the Reds, outside of maybe Ellie De La Cruz or somebody else, but I don't think the Reds should have a mentality that anyone is untouchable. Fair. What if the Yankees came calling and said, we'll give you Jason Dominguez?
Straight up. Oh, you have to do a deal like that. That would be one of those. That would be one of those. The Yankees are desperate overpay kind of trades that you just absolutely couldn't say no to. Now, I'm not saying Jonathan India is untouchable, Jeff, but I stand by that they shouldn't just be. He's getting traded because we've got to trade him for something. I don't see that. No. But if the right deal, if you're going to get Dominguez, a switch hitting, power bat center fielder that's team control, yes, make that move.
You're talking about a stud, a guy that's going to lead your outfield for years and years to come. He actually was just activated from the minor league injured list. He's down in AAA Scranton for the Yankees. He was activated today. So he is beginning a rehab assignment. I've heard our friends over at Locked On Yankees talking about they're getting him rehab so that he could come back to the major leagues, and then they will get rid of Alex Verdugo, and they will replace Verdugo with Dominguez on the roster. Fantasy Island. Yeah, and quite frankly, Dominguez for India isn't going to happen most likely. But the whole rumor about, the Yankees are interested in Jonathan India, well, yeah, Nick Krall should begin the conversation with Jason Dominguez because, quite frankly, all 29 other teams should be interested in Jonathan India. His trade value, I don't think, has ever been higher because of how he is doing. He is performing super well in the statistics, but then when you look at his underlying numbers, his plate discipline numbers, his chase numbers, his, all of that good stuff, that's even better. It's not saying that he's getting lucky. It's saying that what we saw early on in the season was unlucky, and now things are starting to catch up to where they should be. He has become this very smart hitter, and while his glove still isn't fantastic, at least according to outs above average, it has gotten a little bit better. Now, don't ask about, the stat that I just made up, double plays above average, because double plays above average hates Jonathan India, but it hates most of the Reds infield, to be honest with you. But when I look at this, I say, all right, if you're looking at trading Jonathan India, it's got to be for an elite upgrade, not prospects, because he's not on an expiring deal. He is nowhere close to an expiring deal. So Jonathan India is only getting traded in the sense that the Reds will get back this era's version of the Joe Morgan trade. That's what I'm looking for with that.
All right, Jeff, there is plenty more. Miss Nikita checking in with an India Farmer and Wilson for Dominguez deal.
Sure.
Okay. Why not? That works.
I don't know that Farmer and Wilson move the needle that much.
I don't think they do either, unless you're just looking to get rid of Justin Wilson. But listen, there's a lot more to talk about with this deadline and the rooms that the Reds may or may not make and the rumors that are out there. We're going to dig into all of them. Plus, we're going to get into your questions and comments, and we're going to do all of that coming up next.
This episode of Locked On Reds is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. As the Reds are going through this stretch run, headed toward the playoffs, hopefully, that is, as they try to climb back into the wild card, you're probably going to want to follow along with them as they travel around to different cities. Maybe you want to go down to Tampa for this weekend's series. Booking.com is the best way to do that, because all you have to do is you go to their website, you search, Tropicana Field. It's going to bring up hotels nearest to the ballpark and make it easy on you. They've got so many different options with hotels, beds and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more that you can find your perfect stay with, all at Booking.com. And you can even find that in your rival cities like, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Chicago, Milwaukee, all those different stuff. I use this for Atlanta, and it made things so smooth. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city. Made me a fan of Atlanta. It can make you even a fan of Reds' rival cities. Book today at Booking.com on the site, or use the Booking.com app today. And all throughout the rest of baseball season, FanDuel has amazing offers and promos for you to take advantage of each and every day. Plus, there are still some futures out there. They've got an updated win total for the Cincinnati Reds for the rest of the season. If you're like me and you took the over on a much higher win total, they've got the over-under at 77.5 right now. So all they have to do is win 78 games on the season and get you there. I still think they have a chance to be a 500 ball club, but regardless, you can check that out over at FanDuel. They've got same game parlay boosts, up to 50% in some cases, where you can put together the Ellie parlay and get a 50% boost on that. And just in case you're not in the know on the Ellie parlay, take Ellie to get one or more steals, score one or more runs, and get two or more total bases. That's the Ellie parlay, and you can check that all out over at FanDuel. They're America's #1 sports book for a reason, and you can add that big win to your summer bucket list all over at FanDuel.
You have got to check out Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming sports channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinion, and news from our national hosts, as well as our local experts like Jeff and I. Streams 24/7 on YouTube or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, lots and lots of rumors and potential moves, lots of things that could happen. Let's talk blockbuster. Let's talk needle mover. Mm-hmm. Do you foresee a needle moving trade before the deadline on Tuesday made by the Cincinnati Reds to bring in a bat? We keep talking about what they can do. Should they? Will they be looking to next year? Is it going to happen?
No. I think mostly because they're going to be priced out of the players who are available. Something tells me that the move that they're going to make is going to come this offseason. The big needle moving move. They should. They should have yesterday. They should have a week ago. They should have a month ago. But I think that there's a couple of things that, kept them from doing it earlier. Quite frankly, selling teams have no pressure on them whatsoever to trade at a certain point up until the deadline. Deadline is the last time that they can do that. So they can push that as far back as they want to. So part of that is the Reds just didn't really negotiate to the point where they got somebody to trade early. But I don't see... And as much as I really want the Reds to go get Brent Rooker, I don't even see them doing that. I just don't know that they have the buy-in right now. Like I worry that they are still waiting for something to happen in order to fully invest in this roster. They're still of this mindset of, well, the roster is still being filled out by these rookies and these second-year and third-year players that are still trying to prove themselves. We're going to give them a chance to prove themselves, and then we're going to fill in the holes as we need to. But I'm starting to worry that they might be waiting too long for that. And that's where I find a little bit of my mistrust, I think, with where the plan is right now, because I kind of thought we'd be seeing them take a step forward from a front office perspective, because they're treating this as any front office does with their own team. They're treating this like a stock, and I don't think they believe that it's time to buy this stock just yet. I think that I don't think that they believe it's time to sell, but I don't think they believe it's time to buy either.
Yeah, this is their 401k. You just got to let it ruminate. Got to let it marinate. Got to leave it alone and don't look at it.
In more ways than one, I think you're right.
that's the way it is. Here's the deal. Here's the big problem with this trade deadline. And I think even the trade rumors this particular trade deadline have been a little weird. Things have been strange. And I think that all centers around this playoff structure that baseball has implemented, where now there are so many teams that are still in it, air quotes around that, are within a 5-game swing, 4-game swing, that there are no true sellers really out there. There's a few, the Marlins, right, the Rockies. There's those guys, but everybody
they have a lot of talent to sell, though.
Yeah, everybody still has to project an appearance of being in it for their own fan bases and ticket sales, and for a variety of reasons. There aren't going to be an abundance of sellers, which of course means what little bit is out there is going to be way overpriced. If the Reds go make a move, if they go get somebody, it's going to be because the stock on some guy collapsed and the Reds front office thinks, oh, we can fix him, or, he needs a change of scenery. He needs Great American Ballpark. That conversation, or that there's some buyer, Yankees, that is so desperate to make a move and get into the playoffs and win, that they'll make a tremendous overpay, like you talked about with Dominguez. Now, is that an unrealistic pitch? Probably, yeah. But that's the kind of thing we're talking about. It would have to fall to that for there to be a big needle-moving deal made by the Reds, because everybody thinks they're still in it.
Yeah, because I feel like Nick Krall just doesn't have the wherewithal to outbid another team on a trade package. I think that they're happy to outbid another team money, as far as it falls within the budget that he's given. But he is so not tight-fisted. That feels disingenuous, but he's very timid. Let's go with that. He's very timid to dip into his prospect pool in order to go get a major league ball player. And I feel like that shouldn't be the case, but that's how I see it. That's not what I'm rooting for. That's how I see it.
This is great from surface tension. The Reds are acting like that shy kid who's waiting for just the right time to ask his crush to the prom. The perfect moment is never going to come, though.
Yeah, and the perfect moment is the right way to really describe this. They are waiting for everything to line up. They're waiting for the stars to align. They're waiting for Skyline Breakfast to be, completely available across all branches. And they're waiting for, I don't know, Santa Claus to come deliver them a championship. Like, they've got to make this happen. And as much as they're preaching, we want to get rid of peaks and valleys and we want to have a sustainable contender for year in and year out, you got to start with at least one season of contention. They cannot count 2023 because they didn't make the playoffs. You got to make the playoffs, get to the postseason. Yep. I got the chance to go to Atlanta. I've mentioned this a couple of different times on a couple of different shows, but I got the chance to go to Atlanta. And they have all these great pregame activities and all this stuff, and there's so many people, and they're all jazzed up, even for a team that is full of injuries, and they're falling down the standings and all this other stuff. Everybody is so excited because they have that postseason success to fall back on. I don't know if you know this or not, Steve, and I don't know if our folks in the comments section know this or not, but postseason success really does something for a franchise. Maybe they should start with that.
Well, here's the deal. This front office needs to carry itself in a way that it's aggressive, that it needs to act like it's a grown-up, I guess, is a way to talk about that. And that doesn't start with the vice president of baseball operations or whatever he is, president of baseball operations. That doesn't start with the general manager. That starts with a dude named Castellini. So I think the way they're operating is Nick Krall pushing it to the very just limit of where he can push it and not get his hand spanked. So we have to remain realistic. And I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to be overly optimistic about this. But I also think baseball is gonna baseball, and there's going to be somebody that's going to want to overpay because they feel desperate. And if Nick Krall is just playing his cards right and just sits and waits, and as deadline day rolls around, maybe he can pull off a big move.
I hope so, because I feel like if you're to ask me what my prediction is for this deadline, we have a similar move to last year where we get Sam Maul. Maybe you see a couple of other expiring contracts moved for prospects, and that's probably it. My fun question to ask about this would be, what is most likely to happen? You must choose one or two of these options, or one of these two options. Either A, Jonathan India gets traded, or B, the Reds acquire that needle-moving player. Which of those two things do you think happens?
Actually, I'm sorry. We got to jump to this real quick.
It's
distracted me. Sorry. David Brown says Krall laid out his plan 2 years ago. Nowhere in that plan did he say trade top-level prospects for 30-year-old outfielders, designated hitters, especially in year 2 of a rebuild. Well, this is year 40 of a rebuild. First of all, Mr. David Brown, this team has been in rebuilding since 1991. So let's not pretend that they haven't been. They've stumbled into some playoff appearances. They had some good teams lose when they should have won, but ultimately they've never not been rebuilding. But to your point about Nick Krall laid out his plan, this is a fair assessment, Jeff. I think we've been so excited about the prospect of winning. We've been so excited about the prospect of the Cincinnati Reds finally being relevant that we've stopped talking about the plan as Nick Krall laid it out, which is you build your team, you trade guys when they have a year or two of team control left to bring in more prospects, to restock the system and keep the pipeline flowing. So going out and getting a Dominguez with a trade package that it would actually probably require to get him is not exactly on brand for the plan. Going out and renting an outfielder for a year or two that's later in his career doesn't exactly fit with the plan Nick Krall laid out. Now, that being said, this is a Major League Baseball team that is trying to win. They're trying to get into the playoffs, even if they are only chasing the final playoff spot. Then you have to make some side quests, to put it in Jeff Carr lingo. You got to make some side quests and pick up a guy here or there to fill a hole that's been created by injury or a guy just not panning out. So do you see making a move right now, Jeff, at this deadline, abandoning the plan that Nick Krall laid out? As David points out, this is the plan Nick Krall laid out. Are the Reds deviating from that by going and making a move for a 30-year-old outfielder to kind of be a Band-Aid?
No, I don't think it's a deviation from the plan, because I think that the other part of your farm system and the other part of your top prospects are that they feed into the idea that you can go buy the players that you need through trades, because as we well know, and as you have mentioned, the Castellinis give him a budget. There are constraints with which he can go to the free agent market and sign people, because if there weren't, then we would have seen them address all of their needs through free agency this past offseason. They would have gone and get Teoscar Hernandez and brought him here instead of letting him go to Los Angeles and things like that. We would have seen them be far more aggressive in free agency than going and getting a starting pitcher who had shoulder surgery and hasn't really pitched that much over the last year. Like, I really want to see them go get, and that's the other point too, like Scott brings up with Brent Rooker. He has not one, not two, but more than that, like 4 years of control, 3.5 years technically, 2024 is almost over. As soon as we get Brent Rooker, we get a ring. Yeah. But even like looking at the Randy Arozarena trade, which the Reds can't do now because Seattle went and got him, he's under team control for multiple years, like 3 years. That's not deviating from the plan. That is enhancing the plan, because the plan of, all right, build from within, acquire all this young talent, develop them and bring them up to the major leagues and win that way. No team has ever done that. They do trades, they do free agents, they have to supplement. And if the Reds are just going to ignore that part of roster building, then it's not going to work. Like, I do not ever foresee a team that gets to the World Series, gets a ring, hoists a trophy, and they say, not one of these players were acquired not one of these players made a debut for any other team but this team. That just isn't going to happen. So the Reds need to make some moves. And I'd be interested to see if anybody's got like some mock trades on this, some ideas like this. We're going to kind of consider a few of our own as well. Then we'll do that coming up next. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free memberships at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. All you have to do is download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you can take the game anywhere. That's right, even this broadcast of the return of cleanup hitter TJ Friedl. What are we doing?
What a time to be alive.
Yes. Plus, get some written content about your Cincinnati Reds over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. I never thought, and I tweeted that out, never thought I would ever say the words TJ Friedl, cleanup hitter, but here we are, heading down to Tampa Bay. No more Randy Arozarena in Tampa Bay, and TJ Friedl's hitting cleanup. Those Rays fans, all 12 of them, aren't going to know what hit them. let's look at some mock trades, Steve, because I really yeah, I'm just talking some trash here on this Friday live show. Because I feel like there are two schools of thought when it comes to this team, and that is they're either standing pat or they're selling. Nobody is considering a move to make this team better. Like everybody, when you consider or when you suggest, a Brent Rooker or something like that, everybody's like, what are you talking about? There is no way that the Reds go out and make that move. But I feel like they've got to start looking at that in order to get over the hump. Because as fun as this team is, as talented as this team is, it is clear from the way that this year has progressed, they got to sprinkle in a little bit of veteran players there too.
Yeah, and the comment section is really interested in. It's funny. It's kind of evenly divided. There's two camps right now. There's a camp in the comments here of they're not ready. Don't trade guys away. There's too many holes to fill. And then there's the camp of you can go make moves. You can put proposals together. Scott Campbell dropping in a proposal. Let's just start with this, Jeff. Trade idea from Scott Campbell. Rooker for Petty, Blake Dunn, and one non-Dayton Dragons minor leaguer. So just say not Cam Collier. But what do you think of this
or
deal?
South Stewart. You don't want Cam Collier or South Stewart going. I like it. Well, maybe you throw in, I don't know, Julian Aguiar or something like that there. I know Aguiar is a highly rated, but I feel like one top 10 prospect probably doesn't get it done for Brent Rooker because you've got teams like the Phillies and the Pirates and a couple other teams in there as well that are looking for outfield help that are probably knocking down the doors of Oakland to get that trade done anyway. But I do like the idea of that. I think it's very clear, though, he doesn't want to trade Cam Collier or South Stewart.
Quick answer back from David Brown, and he's not wrong. They haven't had a true rebuild since 1981's offseason. Everything else has been a reboot, reset, remodel, etc. They never rebuilt and made moves. They made moves to just appease the fan base. Yeah, that's fair. I give him that.
So the thing here is the idea of a rebuild, like the whole tear down and all this other stuff. Bob torpedoed the last one because he wouldn't trade certain players because he liked them, or he wouldn't trade certain players because he felt as though they were fan favorites and all this other stuff because he himself is a fan. And when a fan runs a team and does not get out of the way and lets their baseball people baseball, you get what happened to the Reds between the years of 2015 and 2019. You get a whole lot of 4 years of guys getting called up and making their major league debut and either playing for a couple of years and then fizzling out or never getting started in the first place because the Reds never had anybody to feel good about building around. And so then they had to go out in 2019, 2020 and all this stuff and buy guys, overpay for aging free agents like Mike Moustakas or make trades for guys like Trevor Bauer and getting Sonny Gray and things like that. But that was the right deal though. That deal they had
the Trevor Bauer deal.
That's
the deal they need now. Not Trevor Bauer. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that multiple type of deal where you're bringing the guy in now really for next year. That's what they need. A lot of this conversation in the comment section right now, Jeff, is are there too many holes? How close are they to really being a playoff team? Can they, they can make the playoffs. I think that's the most confounding, frustrating part of trying to form a narrative around this is they can make the playoffs, but that doesn't mean they're going to do anything once they get there with all the holes that they have. It's very frustrating to try and figure out what lane to put this team in. And I keep drifting back and forth, Jeff, of they got to go out and get that guy that's potential to help the team a little bit now and a lot next year. And just let's see what happens when everybody gets healthy and we can get some guys in the offseason, which I hate being in that lane. But it almost, when you look at this roster and you look at the injuries and you look at all the guys that are out, maybe that's the right play because eventually you're going to run out of prospect capital if you just start trying to fill all the holes at once, and you can't do that. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm a little frustrated in that I can't pick. I can't decide where this team actually belongs. It's in a weird in-between space.
I think that's the way that they're approaching it too. I think they're frustrated looking at this because sure, you can go fill a hole. You can maybe go get, somebody who plays in the infield and can help you out there, maybe a first baseman or something. I saw that, was it Mark Feinsand that said that the Reds would be well served to go out and look for a first baseman on the trade block. I'm like, why? Spencer Steer can play first base. CES is the first baseman of the future. Jamie Candelario can play first base. Like, they don't need to go trade for a first baseman. They need to trade for an outfielder because it's all about who's going to be in that spot for years to come. I can envision a healthy outfield, or a healthy infield of players currently in the organization. Can you tell me without a shadow of a doubt who the 3 outfielders are going to be next year, let alone for the next 3 years?
Nope. I can barely project one. TJ Friedel, if he remains healthy. The other guys, I don't know. And I talked about with Tim Daniel when he was on while you were out, that it's possible they need to go out and get a total new outfield, replacement this offseason.
Because that's the other point of this. And I love the feeling and I love the argument of, well, we're a small market team, so we have to develop from within and all this other stuff. Is there is there 3 guys in organization who are going to be big parts of this outfield in the next year or 2? Because I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody like that. So you got to go get those guys, because the idea that every single player on your starting 9, let's say starting 9, we'll include the pitcher. Every single one of your starting 9 comes from in-house is just a pipe dream, because we've seen it this year where we felt like they had 5 really good players in their own organization, and most of them have been hurt for most of the year. So when will it happen that all of the players that you expect to be your core are ready to be your core, and B, all of those players who are ready are healthy? Because experience would tell me there's maybe never a scenario where that's the case. Maybe 1% of the time.
I agree with you that I don't know how those stars align, but from Jared, it's in quotes: "Fire David Bell." I don't know if he's quoting me, but
fire David Bell.
Could be. Kenneth says Bell's not getting fired. While you were away, again, I got a little fiery after that sweep down in Washington, and I just outright said David Bell needs to no longer be the manager of this team, Jeff.
Oh, but he beat the Braves.
No, stop it. The what the Reds did between Washington and Atlanta is exactly on brand with all of the problems that I was talking about in that show while you were out. The only thing that the Reds are consistent at is being inconsistent. They don't beat the teams they're supposed to. They play well against the teams that you think are going to murder them. And all the while, they're lazy defensively. They make errors that they shouldn't be making. They're prone to mental lapses, and there is no discipline on this team. There is nobody pushing these players to be better. That's David Bell's job, and he is not doing it. And I want him removed from the dugout. And I also understand that the Bell family has a long-standing relationship with the Castellinis. I don't see that Bob Castellini is going to fire David Bell. So promote him. And I don't care if you promote him to assistant general manager, to vice president of baseball operations, to Nick Kral's caddy. I don't care, as long as he's out of the dugout and they bring in somebody to change the attitude in this clubhouse and hold guys accountable when they make lazy mental mistakes that cost this team ball games. That's what I want to have happen. Will it happen? I don't know, but that is part of the fix. If you want the Cincinnati Reds team to be better and be better consistently, it starts there. It starts with David Bell. I'm done with the David Bell experiment. He needs to be out of the dugout.
David Bell, assistant to the traveling secretary, 2025.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that you have a point there. I still feel like the jury, for me, is out, but I also think that there's a lot to be said about that because he's been here for a few years now. The jury should not be out. We should know how we feel about David Bell. And I feel like it's such a player's game that you don't want to go too crazy on who the manager is. But I also think that the way this team has played this year, probably a change in voice would be a positive outcome for them in 2025. Would at least lead to a different feeling team, maybe. I don't think for a moment that David Bell has this low energy post game presser and then turns around to the team and is a low energy person to the team. I think that there's a side of David Bell that we don't get to see because he makes sure of that. But they make a lot of the same mistakes night in and night out. And they do a lot of things that it just leads me to believe that there isn't somebody that is holding them accountable in that clubhouse. And quite frankly, there was the report, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was an article in the Inquirer by your favorite man, Gordon, talking about how Luke Maley gave an impassioned speech from the bus ride from the airport to the Atlanta ballpark, Truist Park, and how that really resonated with a lot of players. Is that where we're at now? That we have to have players-only meetings to do the fundamentals right? Because if that is the answer, then yes, they should make a change in leadership.
No, and that speaks to maybe the lack of veteran leadership on this team. If your backup injured catcher is the rah-rah guy to rally the troops. I mean, we have talked a lot, Jeff, about does that matter? Is there really something to this whole veteran leadership thing? And we've had some former players say, no, it's not as big a deal as everybody makes it out to be. But it sure does seem like it is a little bit of a bigger deal than not. And, this, I think, was where they're missing Joey Votto. We heard stories year after year after year of a guy is struggling, a guy does something, and what the guy was then seen with Joey Votto pulled off to the side, having a conversation, going over things, reviewing stuff. I think that's what's missing a little bit. And David Bell is not providing that type of leadership, and he's not providing stability. In order to thrive, this team needs consistency. It needs to continue to improve on areas where it's weak. Defensively, the errors that they make are more often than not very avoidable errors. I mean, errors are going to happen in the game of baseball, but there's stuff that happens with this team that was completely avoidable, that cost them games, and that we see repeated, which means that nobody's correcting, nobody's working on it. So, and I know everybody wants to ask the question. I saw it go by, if here, Jared's got it for me. Jared's good with making him an assistant general manager. Who's the interim manager? What do you do? I don't know that you use somebody in-house. Do you think that maybe Derek Johnson could be a manager? I don't know. He's kind of got his hands full with the pitching situation from top to bottom in the organization. Do you bring up Pat Kelly, who just got his 2000th minor league win, bring him up and let him run the team the rest of the year with these guys that he's already coached and that respect him? Maybe that's an option. Joey Votto as player manager. Why the hell not? Why the hell not?
Well, and to Dire Wolf Dog's point about Joey Votto as player manager, not necessarily as player manager, but I also saw a piece in the Inquirer about going and trading for Joey Votto at the trade deadline and saying that is the reason. The veteran leadership and everything that he brought to the table last year has clearly been a huge negative for this team this year. So just go get him, bring him back.
Yeah, I'm in on that actually, because I really don't think that 2024 is going to be the year. That's a pretty feel good story, and maybe it will make enough of a difference to get them into that playoff spot. And then you get in the playoffs. We keep talking about this, Jeff. You never know what's going to happen. Just ask the Diamondbacks, and that's not going to happen every year. Sometimes the teams that are supposed to win are going to win, but you have to have a ticket to the tournament in order to be an upset, to be a Cinderella story. So maybe that's a move. I know that Joey went up to Buffalo and then promptly re-injured his ankle a little bit, but it doesn't sound like it's as bad as the first time round. So he still could be a tool. You go and trade for him, let him run the team, and then when he can put him on the active roster, you put him on the active roster. This is not going to happen. They're not making this move, but they could go make this move. I don't know that there's anybody that could really argue too much against this move. They're not going to have to trade very much to get him. And I would be down with watching Joey manage this team the rest of the year. That might actually be entertaining.
I didn't see it because I'm looking forward to see if I can find it. And I can't. but somebody had said, what about Barry Larkin?
So, you know who turned me around on this Barry Larkin thing? I think 2 off seasons ago, Jeff, we had Mo on. And Mo was like, everybody keeps saying Barry Larkin. Has anybody asked Barry Larkin? Barry Larkin, I'm sure if he wanted to be the manager, he would have already been the manager. The fact that Barry Larkin's in the broadcast booth says that Barry's doing exactly what he wants to do, and he doesn't have to travel with the team. And I think he's got the gig that he wants. There was an opportunity multiple times for Barry Larkin to be the manager of this team. And also, why would Barry Larkin, one of the more beloved players to play for the Cincinnati Reds, a career Red, a Hall of Famer, why would you put that reputation on the line for a front office and an ownership group that's never all in, that's never going to do every single thing necessary to make you a winner? This is not the 90s. This is not the Marge Schott-led Reds that can get by on, spending a little bit of money here and there and piecing together some winners. This is not how baseball works anymore. Why would Barry Larkin take that risk?
And his reputation is invincible right now. I mean, sure, people can say what they want about him as an analyst, but that doesn't do anything to his actual reputation. I think that he's been a fantastic player all of his career, and if he does this as manager, then he resets, or not resets it, but he definitely puts it in jeopardy a lot. And then I like this point, and I kind of want to wrap up our managerial conversation, get back to the trade deadline here in just a moment, but I want to wrap it up with this because James makes a good point. Seems the Cubbies made a big boo-boo getting rid of their manager that they had and getting the one that they have now in Craig Counsell, and it didn't make any difference. And in fact, James, you could even argue that it might have made a negative difference because they're even worse than they were last year. So that's the hardest part about this manager.
But I wouldn't mind David Ross. I mean, I'm just saying, if we're going to talk about, bring David Ross in here. I'm okay with that.
Be interesting. Definitely would be interesting. I've seen a couple of different ones. Where was the one that I wanted to get to? Because somebody made a good point that I wanted to talk about. Nope. I think it was Gino that said it there.
Just really quickly, while you're looking for that, Alex says he heard Corky Miller is available. That would be fun as well. I'm talking about bringing in somebody to create discipline, and I feel like if you hired Corky Miller as your manager, the electrolyte infused drinks coolers would be replaced with cases of Natty Ice. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think it could be an entirely different dugout experience with Corky Miller running the club. Just for fun.
Here we go. Bobby brings this up. How would you feel about Luis Rengifo being a Red? Quite frankly, Bobby, if the Reds made a trade with the Angels, I would love it if this is the guy they got back. I think that they would most likely get Taylor Ward back from the Angels. But if you were trading for an Angel right now, if you were asking me if I had to trade for one Angel, I would pick Luis Rengifo over Taylor Ward because Luis Rengifo can actually play all over the place. He's not really good defensively anywhere, but he is passable defensively at most places, and he has been really good with the bat so far this year.
Are you using him in the outfield?
I mean, probably. Or
Baseball Reference has him as an infielder, second base, third base, shortstop. This year is 1.7 in WAR. Slash line is respectable. He's hitting 308. Okay. But where are you going to play him? Who are you going to sit down? Are you replacing Marte with him? Like, what are you doing?
We are talking about the organization that put Levi Jordan in right field.
They put Tyler Stevenson in left field. Anybody can play outfield.
According to the Reds, yes. No, but I would love to see that. All right, so I know that I've talked ad nauseum about Brent Rooker. I know I've talked ad nauseum about a couple of different players. Who is your one move? Like, if you get to make one move, Nick Kroll is calling you, Steve Offenbaker, and saying, Steve, who we getting?
I get to pick. I get to make the deal.
Because usually you're just reacting to what I say. I haven't really asked you who you're picking.
Here's the thing. I think you nailed this the first time you tried it. And that's really like where our conversation has remained around. And that's because I think a trade with the A's is what makes the absolute most sense for this team to do for a lot of reasons. I think that Rooker is a good fit for this team. I think he fills the need that we think the Reds have immediately, the need that they've had since last offseason and they haven't addressed. But here's why I think the A's are a great trade partner. They don't care to win right now. They don't want to win right now. They don't give two hoots about winning another baseball game between now and the time they get to Las Vegas. You can trade a package of lower level prospects and go out and get this guy, because the A's will be happy to patiently wait and watch those guys develop so that they'll be ready when the team finally gets to Las Vegas. That is the perfect trade partner for the Reds. We've got some prospect talent lower in the system that might hit, that might not hit. You make a package and you fix this major league problem with a guy that you have team control over for multiple seasons. That's the perfect trade. And they say a broke clock is right twice a day, Jeff, and you walked right into the best deal possible for the Reds right out of the gate. And that's kind of where we're sitting. That's the trade that I'm in on. That's the right move for this team. And they should have done it weeks ago.
I would love it. Like if they trade for Brent Rooker, if that's the deal, this deadline, I will not do a backflip, but I will think about doing a backflip because I will be so happy. I think his bat at Great American Ballpark, he absolutely mashes the ball. He does not hit it on the ground. He hits it in the air. He hits line drives. He hits it hard. And he has done so well this season at not chasing and not swinging and missing. He's pretty league average in those, but quite frankly, most of the league is swinging wildly at stuff. In fact, I saw something the other day. I think that his contact rate in the month of July is almost 75%. That is unheard of. And an absolutely bonkers stat. I would love to see him in a Reds uniform today, tomorrow, all the way up to Tuesday. He can't really be on Wednesday. Maybe they trade for him on Tuesday and then he gets here on Wednesday, but that's the latest that he could possibly be here. So sometime between now and then, if they could go get him, I feel a lot better about this outfield, and I feel a lot better about this lineup, not only this year, but he's under team control for like 2 or 3 more years after this. So that would just be magnificent if they could go.
I really think that you nailed this one. And I know you and Sully have talked about this a little bit, and I would love to revisit it with him, but I just don't see it. It's the perfect scenario for the two teams that are involved. The A's have that thing the Reds really need. The Reds have prospects, which is what the A's really need. It's not a huge needle mover one way or the other for the A's. It's not a huge needle mover for the Reds, except that it does address those things and it gives you something to build around. So
3 more years of team control after this.
See? That is perfect. There are some folks, just so you know, based on your tweet, I think, they're questioning your athletic ability in the comment section right now, Jeff. James wants to know why you would hurt yourself doing backflips. Coach of the Year suggests a cartwheel instead, and I will have everybody know that Jeff Carr is the guy that fell off the rowing machine at Orange Theory. He needs to be not doing any of those things.
I'm pretty good at the rowing machine now, though. I'm good at getting better at stuff, but certainly am I not.
And Orange Theory, if you're listening and you still have that security footage, I'm willing to pay a price because it will get used on the show. It will be made into the memes and the GIFs and all of the things. Just reach out.
It was an unfortunate moment, that's for sure. But no, I do not think I could ever do a backflip under Indy. Maybe off of a diving board into a pool, and even then I still think I'm doing a belly flop.
How about this? Let's talk about Chris Sabo for a minute. I know you're trying to get away from all this managerial talk, but Chris Sabo is a name to replace David Bell. I don't know if we can get him or not. He did a pretty solid job in college. That's true. Chris Sabo is not going to come manage this team either. These 90s Reds guys, these 90s world champion Cincinnati Reds. I do have that going for me, Jeff. I do remember that. Any of those guys wanted to be in coaching / managerial positions with this team, they would have done that already. It would have happened long ago. Think Billy Hatcher. none of these guys are coming at this point. They've established other paths and done other things. It's not going to happen, but boy, that's how long ago it's been for the winning. We're reaching back to the 90s teams to try and to recapture it.
And that's why we are so frustrated with a given sweep at the hands of the Nationals in the middle of July, because it's been so long since there's actually been success with this team. And sure, you can tell me about the division championships in 2010 and 2012, but okay, sure. There's been 2 years of success since their last postseason advancement in 1995. And then even when they won the division in 2010 and 2012, they did not advance in the playoffs. So there's so much of this team that I think that we crave for them to succeed. And so when we constantly hear, we're waiting on everybody to get up here and get good at baseball and be healthy all at the same time, that's when we all start, losing our minds, because I just don't think that reality ever coincides with that plan. You have got to supplement it with going for guys that know what they're doing at the major league level right now, and guys who are healthy at the major league level right now. I am so tired, and I've been enjoying, for the most part, watching Frankie Montas pitch this season. I've been enjoying his comeback story. I'm so tired of the Reds leaning on comeback stories for their big acquisitions. Go get somebody who's established. Can they not do that? Because this sport does not have a salary cap. And as much as we talk about small market until we're blue in the face, there should be no excuse for them to build a roster. But it feels like that's all I've heard my entire life, is excuse after excuse as to why they cannot fill this need, or why they cannot put together a competent team. And, well, we had an idea for that in February, but injuries really derailed it, so gosh golly gee, we'll wait till next year.
The piece of this that's the most frustrating to me is at the end of 2023, we talked about the need for a power hitting outfield right-handed bat. The entire offseason before 2024, we talked about the need for a right-handed hitting outfield power bat. All through the beginning parts of this season, up until now today at the deadline, this team needs a right-handed hitting outfield power bat. It's not a like they didn't address these unanticipated needs. We thought we had a guy and now he's hurt. That's not the case. They have needed a stinking right-handed outfield power bat for a while now. And I think those are the moments that tick me off. Those are the things that make me mad, because while they could never have anticipated that Matt McClain would wreck his shoulder and CES would have season-ending surgery and that their medical staff would get every single diagnosis wrong for the entire year, they couldn't maybe have anticipated all of those things. They knew they needed a right-handed hitting outfield power bat, and they didn't do anything about it. And that's the kind of stuff that frustrates me with this team. That's the part of the plan. We're talking about Nick Kral's plan. That's the part of the plan that ticks me off, because you're like, you've got your plan, but you had this need and everybody saw it. Everyone recognized it and you did nothing. So they don't get a pass from me on that. I'm willing to say, like, the injuries, and I agree with you that some of it was just at a volume that you just could not have adjusted for, but you could have got an outfielder. You could have got a right-handed outfielder that hit for power, and you did. So before we get out of here, Jeff, let's segue just a little bit, because we have yet to really talk about the fact that there's a 3-game series starting here in just a little bit down in Tampa, one of the worst ballparks in Major League Baseball. If you have not been there, it is like the Reds are playing a game in the Mall of America tonight. It is not a fun baseball environment. When I was down there last year, it was actually the day that the Rays announced they're getting a new ballpark. Thank God. A much better baseball facility to play baseball in. But nevertheless, the Reds are playing baseball there this weekend. It's a 3-game series, Jeff. First 2 games of this series, the Rays are throwing right-handers, which allows the Reds to put the best version of themselves on the field. So I'm excited about that. They're TBA. The Rays are TBA on the final game of the series as to what they're doing. So we don't quite know yet what that's going to look like. But for the Reds, Nick Lodolo goes tonight. And I'm excited about Nick Lodolo. I saw a comment from Carrot go by earlier talking about will the Reds pitchers, specifically Lodolo and Abbott, run into innings limits? And looking at what has happened, I think that last IL stint for Lodolo, I think you're kind of on it when you say that it was a bit of a load management trip also. I think they're setting him up to their projections, get him through the season. That being said, I would like to see, whenever possible, you get him out of there at 100 pitches, whether that's 6 innings, 7 innings, 5 innings, just give him kind of a 100 pitch cap to try and prolong his season, because Carrick's point is valid. Nick Lodolo has not pitched an entire season. And if by some miracle we're talking about postseason baseball, he needs to have something left in the tank. So we're at the trade deadline. We're almost to August. It's time to manage a little bit more. Same with Andrew Abbott. Carrick mentioned Abbott in that comment earlier as well. I think you put a cap on him and start trying to stretch out those innings, because if by some miracle you stumble into the playoffs, Hunter Green can't start every game. And even he hasn't pitched an entire uninterrupted season. So I think Carrick's point was valid. I would like to see the Reds start a little bit of load management with the starting pitchers. That being said, set it all up for this to ask you, what do you think in this series? 2 of 3? Can the Reds continue to keep the good baseball vibes going down in Tampa? Are they gonna frustrate us again?
I think that they get 2 out of 3, especially with the Rays having traded their face of the franchise. That I think the Randy Arozarena thing, because we don't necessarily understand Rays fandom right now, because we're Reds fans, we don't really understand the big jarring nature of that move. And quite frankly, they're still talking about possibly trading their third baseman in Isaac Paredes. They're still talking about their first baseman, Yandy Diaz, being available. One of their better starting pitchers, Zach Eflin, is available. There might be a lot more moves that the Tampa Bay Rays make this weekend, because quite frankly, if anybody goes all in on one feeling, whether they're a buyer or a seller, it's the Rays. And when the Rays are selling, they're selling big time. So this roster may be in flux for the Rays this weekend. I feel like the Reds should take 2 out of 3. I stopped short of saying anything else after that, but I definitely think that we should see them win these first 2 games.
Yeah, I agree with that. The third game being a bit of a wild card, you know how getaway days are, and with the Rays potentially running out of bullpen day, you never know. But the Rays play good baseball at times. So following the Reds narrative, if they're playing a team that plays good baseball, they generally play good. So I agree. 2 of 3. I think that's pretty much on point for the Reds, and then get this road trip over, Jeff.
Yeah, and then get back and face the Cubbies, who has been the only team in the division so far this year that the Reds have had success against. Hopefully they can continue having success against them. We will preview that series coming up next week. We will also continue to talk about the trade deadline. Hopefully we've got some trades this weekend or something like that. Whenever a deal goes down, we will be here, whether it be a short reaction video, or if it's a big enough deal, we might be even, going live to react to the deal and give you our breakdown of it, because we will be with you every step of the way through the Reds season. Because why, Steve?
Because we are going to be locked on deadline deals and locked on Reds every single day. We need the rowing machine footage.